Moderating this evening is Sue Shapiro, writing teacher at the New School. She's joined by writers Moses Gates, author of The Hidden Cities, Royal Young, author of Fame Shark, and Leigh Newman, author of Still Points North. There are teams of editors and agents, including Renee Zuckerbrot, Heliotrope publisher Naomi Rosenblatt, agent Matt Wise, and NAL editor Danielle Perez are here to help further illuminate the process that takes a piece of writing from manuscript to bound and published work. Without further delay, please welcome this evening's panel. That one should be on.
Should be on?
The bottom.
Okay. Hello? Hello? Hi. I don't think this is on.
Let's take this one.
Hello? Great. Okay, wanted to welcome everybody, and it's a really a special occasion because it's my former student Royal Young. It's both his birthday and the pub date for his debut memoir, Fame Shark. So we're celebrating.
Thank you.
And Royal brought his agent, and his editor at Heliotrope. And right around the same time, another brilliant former student of mine, Moses Gates, had a fantastic book called Hidden Cities, a travel book, come out right around the time that Leigh Newman had her gorgeous memoir, Still Points North, about her Alaska childhood, come out. And Leigh Newman is a speaker to all my classes, so he thought, oh, what a great excuse to get everybody together. And one of the things that I always tell people whenever people complain about publishing, I always say I'm one of the happiest people. I've had enough therapy, so I'm very happy these days in publishing. And I've done 9 books myself, and this is my beloved editor, Danielle Perez, who gave me my first 3 books I published with her, and now she'll never get rid of me for the rest of her life. For every panel and event, she has to come. And my attitude in publishing is actually the lines that I use for my students at the New School and NYU are that the rules are: the first piece that you write that your family hates means that you found your voice, and also no never means no. It means rewrite it and make it a million times better, and then try somebody nicer, and they're going to say yes. And I have 70 students who've published books in the last 7 years, and with advances, some of them had the nerve to get way higher advances than me. Someone got a $500,000 advance, so I was like, congratulations and fuck you at the same time. Anyway, so what I'd like to do is let's introduce everybody, and because I wanted to start on a really upbeat note, because I feel like people are a little bit too negative about especially the print world and publishing these days. So I want to start with happy stories. So Royal, since it's your pub date, could you say let's talk about like the happiest moment, like was it when you got a yes from Naomi at Heliotrope when she's buying the book that he wrote the whole book, or was it when you saw it in print? What was the most exciting moment so far?
I mean, I think that there are so many, and they kind of accumulate, and certainly when I got a yes from Naomi, I was just so fucking ecstatic. But holding that book in your hands for the first time is such a crazy feeling, and it took me 4 years to write it, and so much rejection, and so that final triumph is all the sweeter.
And if you don't mind me asking, just because I want to get down to the nitty-gritty, I think you do what I do, which is when you're writing a memoir, you write the whole book. And usually they say with the novel, you have to write the whole thing, which is like 230 pages at least. You have to write the whole thing. With memoir, some people do it on proposal, but you wrote over 200 pages, the whole book.
Yeah, I wrote the entire book, and since it is a memoir, and I just turned 28 yesterday, and I'm so young, I found that everyone was kind of like, you're too young, we don't really care about your life, and why did you write about your life in the first place? And so I really had to prove them wrong, and I did that not only by really concentrating on the writing and going to writing workshops with Sue and just making it incredibly strong, but working as a journalist for the past 7 years at Interview Magazine and the New York Post and getting exposure to writers I hugely admire, like Anne Rice, maybe a bad example, but she's awesome. And so that really strengthened it, and it made the waiting process into a learning process.
Great. Now, Moses, he did something brilliant when he wrote his book, which is also kind of a memoir, a travel memoir, which is that he's an urban planner who teaches urban planning, and he loves to travel. So did you find that having such a good platform for your book, Hidden Cities, helped you sell it? And also, not only do I remember you told me you did a proposal, but Moses did us a favor for anybody here, and he actually has a copy of the query letter that he sent to the agent, which you guys can get a copy of. So how many pages was your proposal when you wrote it?
So I underestimated Sue and brought 30 copies of my query letter that also has commentary from my agent, Alyssa Rubin, about why she liked it. So you might have to share amongst yourselves. I'm sorry about that. I should have known Sue would have gotten like 100 million people here. So people talk a lot about platform, and I think it scares some folks off. They hear, oh, you have to have a platform, and
that's for nonfiction book. You have to have like an expertise usually.
Right, but people read platform. It's like, oh my God, I don't have any Twitter followers, and nobody knows who I am, and therefore, how can I write a book? And I'm trapped in this cycle of like, I have no fame until I write a book, and I can't write a book until I have fame. So the platform that helped me wasn't really my platform; it was my subject's platform. And the fact that and the kind of topic itself's platform, and the willingness of me to develop a platform, and those I think are almost as important as actually having a platform yourself. One of the lines from Alyssa's response is, I also like that he illustrated a real public interest in the story, asserting his book would be the first of its kind to delve into the subculture in the way he was intending.
And so it was a subculture of weird urban travel, right?
Right, it's a subculture of like weird urban people who like to travel, but it wasn't just stories about me that sold the book, it was newspaper and magazine articles about the topic in general that also sold the book. So I would advise folks who are like worried about the platform thing to think expansively about it, and in your query letter not just say, oh, I have X amount of Twitter followers and I've been in Y stories and I can reach Z people, but also show why your topic is something that people want to read about. Best example is beekeeping. I know a beekeeping book will sell. I know a whole bunch of like really nerdy beekeepers and folks who love it. I don't know if everybody knows that like a beekeeping book is something that'll sell, but if you want to write it and you include all the stories about all the hipsters who do beekeeping, that'll help you in your query letter.
And what was did you say that your best moment was the yes? When the editor said yes with the book?
You know, Louis C.K. has this anecdote about the first time he played Carnegie Hall and he didn't feel anything because, like, it's not like you just arrived there. There's like a million steps along the way. So what
was your best moment with your book? Was it seeing it or getting the yes?
It was when I signed with my agent. That was when I was like, oh, this is real, and I'm actually in the publishing world, for lack of a better term. It's like, you know, whenever you're trying to crack a world or a business or a culture that you don't know, kind of the first time that you poke through it and you're like, okay, I'm in now, and you know, I've transformed my paradigm. That was kind of it.
Great. Now, Leigh Newman, who wrote her memoir "Still Points North," I was actually 41 when I sold my first book, and Leigh had published a lot in a lot of different publications, and at the time, she's still the one of the editors at Oprah.com. So what was your best moment? Was it the yes, or was it seeing the book in print?
Well, actually, I had sold my book on a partial on 60 pages, and at the time I wasn't employed at Oprah.com. Okay. It was 2 years before that, so I didn't have a job. I was intensely pregnant. It was the recession. And I wrote 60 pages of the book, the best 3 chapters I could come up with, and then I wrote a letter about what I thought the book might be. And I think I wrote a brief outline, which I admitted was fictional. As I wrote the outline, I said, I think it'll be like this, but I'm not sure. And even when I sold the book, I was still kind of initiated. I was in such a state of shock having sold it. You know, I think I was 9 months pregnant. No, actually, my child had just been born, so I was 4 weeks. And even, I kind of didn't believe it. I just kept writing it for 3 years. When they handed me the book, my editor was not there that day. It was like the editorial assistant, who's lovely, but there was no ceremony. She just kind of gave it to me in the lobby, and it was raining. You know, and I was like, huh? Like, But actually, the moment for me was I had a book party. I threw myself a book party, which I highly, highly think you should do if you ever had a book. I never have given myself a birthday party. I haven't celebrated those moments in my life. And I was like, I'm having a book party. I'm having canapes. I'm having cheap white wine. I'm having every person I've ever met in my life into one room.
And that was the thrill.
Yeah. And it was like a wedding. It was like a wedding, the birth of a child, a baptism, a bat mitzvah of your whole life. That's it. And I'm a WASP, so I don't even know what a bat mitzvah is, but I've seen them. So that's it, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, now we want to hear from the editors and agents. So Naomi Rosenblatt, could you tell us about Heliotrope and the kind of books that you might be open for? And also, as a publisher, like is there a moment, like a moment that stood out for you, like maybe when you published your first book or when you founded Heliotrope? Can you tell us a little bit about your publishing house?
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm actually the president and publisher of Heliotrope, and I'm an editor as well as the designer and the production supervisor and the administrator. I do everything. I'm a one-woman press, and I work only with consultants. So it's quite a lot of different things. Like, for example, today I was on the phone with a distribution center of UPS in Pennsylvania because we wanted to have a whole lot more books here, and we don't, and this is the kind of thing that comes up for a publisher. There's a lot of it that's quite unglamorous and nitty-gritty, and I have to do the range of it. Everything from typos to cover design to royalty statements, Twitter feed. It all comes down to me. But I do work in tandem with other people, and I'd say that my authors are really my partners.
And you do fiction and nonfiction, right?
I've done mostly nonfiction.
Okay.
But I have done some fiction and hope to do more.
And if you don't mind, just because there's so many writers in the audience, if somebody sees Royal's beautiful book and wants to submit a book to Heliotrope, do you agree that for a novel you have to write the whole thing, but for nonfiction sometimes it's okay to do it on a proposal, or do you prefer to have a whole nonfiction book written?
I think it's fine to do it on proposal.
Okay. Great.
So
next to you we have Renee Zuckerbrot, who's a literary agent. She actually started out as a book editor at Doubleday, and now she's a literary agent in the Flower District who does both fiction and nonfiction, and also both literary and commercial work. So Renee, could you tell us a little bit about your background, and again, like what's the biggest thrill for first as an editor and an agent? Is it discovering somebody, like reading the manuscript that you're the one that realizes that's, it's gonna happen? What's an exciting moment for you?
Okay. First, I just want to say I think agents sometimes get a bad rap, in that people say, "Oh, it's so hard to reach agents." It's so hard to get a response from agents. They're not interested in new projects. But it's actually quite the opposite. We are eternally optimistic. Every day when I get up, it's an opportunity to discover a new writer. I don't know what's waiting for me in my email or in the mail, snail mail. Some queries still come by snail mail. So I just want to sort of impress you with that fact that we are optimistic. We believe every day is an opportunity to discover a great new writer, first and foremost. And to answer your question, what makes us excited? It is discovering, two things. It's discovering a new writer, a new voice. You kind of feel like when you're reading a manuscript, like no one else knows about this. Although that's not always true, because most submissions are done multiply. But you like to think, it's just you and this manuscript and no one else knows about it, and that you're going to share it with the world, and you're going to help make a writer's career. So that's really exciting. Another sort of aspect of the job that is also is exciting and sometimes challenging is writers will go through many peaks. They cycle. Sometimes they're up and sometimes they're down. And occasionally, a writer will approach you who's had 2 or 3 books, has decided to change agents, or maybe the agent has fired the writer, the client, and you discover something and you help get a writer back on track. And that is also really exciting and another important part of our job. But I think it's just really, for me, it's to discover a great new voice. And I think editors would say the same thing. I mean, not just agents.
And would you agree that most of the time for a novel that you have to write the whole novel, but for nonfiction, you could either, like Royal and I do with the memoir, you could either write the whole book or you could do a proposal, that either one will sell a nonfiction book depending on the book? and the
Yes.
editor?
Well, rules were made to be broken. So while most novels are sold based on, a finished draft, when I was at Doubleday, I remember, on a few occasions we bought something based on 50 or 75 pages. It was so good, but that's the exception. That's not the rule. So for novels, they have to be written. The other exception is if you've written a short story collection and you want to try and get a 2-book deal. If you have a partial novel or an idea for a novel with a synopsis, you can then sell the novel as unwritten. For memoirs, it's the same thing. I remember when I was at Doubleday, we paid a lot of money for a memoir by Michael Gilmore called Shot in the Heart. Michael Gilmore was Gary Gilmore's brother. And I don't know, I think we got 15, 20 pages. And I remember like it was yesterday, I was supposed to meet friends at Veselka for brunch. And I was sitting in my studio reading. I couldn't stop reading it. It had come into my boss, it had not come into me. And it was the most amazing thing. And it didn't matter that there were only 20 or 25 pages or maybe 40. And there wasn't even like a proper outline. I mean, it wasn't what, the agents say, which is a sample chapter and a description of each, synopsis of each chapter and marketing and bio and all that stuff we make you do. This didn't have any of that, but it was so good. The voice was so compelling. And then it did have that platform, and that everyone knew who Michael Gilmore was, right? The first man to be executed, I think it was 1977 or 78, in, I don't know, 50 years or something. So he had that platform.
So if you have any relatives on death row, you got an in.
No, I'm not suggesting that. But what really sold it was, and I don't know if any of you have read Shot in the Heart, I mean, the voice is so compelling, and it's this great story, and so you just can't put it down. And I remember exactly how much we paid for it. I won't say, but it was a monster 6-figure advance.
Great, and Matt Wise next to me works with Royal at Foundry, which is a boutique agency that has 13 agents that does fiction and nonfiction. So could you talk about that also? Like, do you think at Foundry, does that rule pretty much hold up, which is that for a novel, you almost always have to write close to the whole thing, and for nonfiction, it could either be a proposal or sometimes you get a whole book in?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, rules are made to be broken. We work with Patrick DeWitt, who wrote The Sisters Brothers, was a Man Booker nominee. In his second book that he's working on now, we sold on, I think, 60 pages. So yeah, certainly, if you're getting a new voice, it's nice to see an entire work. It's nice to see an entire work finished. It's also nice to see other things that they've sort of written in the world, instead of sending you, just a novel. There are other things they've been writing for a long time. And I guess things that are exciting too, something that we do at Foundry that's different is we're really big on foreign rights and trying to retain the rights so we can then sort of hand sell them at international book fairs. And it's always really exciting to say, like, we just sold this book in Croatia, it's great to meet, somebody sort of, they're writing in somewhere in the world and come to you and suddenly their book is being published in 27 countries. It feels like a great success for them. It's exciting.
Great, and next to me is Danielle Perez, who I met when she was working at Random House, and we did 3 books together, and now she's the executive editor at NAL Penguin, and has actually bought several books that I recommended, including Beth Bernstein, who last year did an amazing memoir called My Charmed Life, who's here today. So Danielle, what, like for you, for an editor, what's a big thrill moment? Is it when you discover somebody new, or when you see an author whose book you love come out? What's exciting for an editor?
I think there are a lot of stages that are really exciting for an editor, because we're with the author and the project from the beginning, from when we acquire it through the whole process of the production and everything that happens through that, through the cover, through the book coming out and publicity, and on if there are other books as well. So there are a lot of different parts that are exciting. But definitely when you're reading, as someone else was saying, when you feel that you're kind of the only person alone with that work, even though as an editor there may be 10 other editors reading it at the same time I am. So when you find something that you think just has such a terrific voice and you're able to acquire it, for us, the other point of view from writers, of course, is when you get that offer, and that's very exciting. But from the editor point of view, we might be up against other editors, it might be an auction, you might be the only bid on a project, you never know. So when you get to actually acquire something, it's a very exciting time for an editor when you acquire something. And then I would say working with the author, kind of that first round of edits, is a really exciting time for me, kind of finding out exactly what the author wanted to bring forth and bring out in their work, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, because I do both, and then trying to help them get to a place where the book is even stronger than it was, and an author taking something and making it organic, and me talking to them about various comments on a book, and then getting to see that next draft is always a very exciting time for an editor too, I think.
I remember after she bought 5 Men, we were then meeting for dinner. It was a blind date, and I said, it's the best blind date I've ever been on because I already love you, you already know my whole life story, and you're already supporting me. If you don't mind, just because from an editor standpoint, I know every editor and agent is different, but do you mostly agree that if it's a new author, that for a novel you should have just about the whole book written, and that for a memoir, we've talked about this, or nonfiction, that it could either be the whole book or it could be a big chunk of it?
Yeah, I would say definitely for a new author, if a novel, the whole thing. For nonfiction, I honestly prefer, even for a new author, proposal and partial rather than getting the whole manuscript. I mean, I read lots of full manuscripts for nonfiction, but sometimes I feel like there's a lot of shaping that can go on in nonfiction that sometimes I almost prefer having a proposal with a big chunk of sample material, though, so you can really see the author's arc of the story as well.
Okay, so now I want to talk about mistakes, because I'm a writing teacher, and I teach the Instant Gratification Takes Too Long School of Writing, where the goal of my class is to write and publish a great piece by the end of the class to pay for the class, and one of the rules is don't ever finish something alone in your computer at 3 in the morning and then press the button to send it to the New Yorker. Like you always have to slow down, and I actually always tell the story of the truth, which is that when I wrote my first novel, I wrote it, and I sent it out way, way, way too fast, and I got billions of rejections, and actually with my shrink and with a couple friends who had been published, they actually told me the trick that they used to slow them down, which is after they finished a whole novel, they would then pay a professional ghost editor who, and a lot of the ghost editors that I've worked with are either they've worked as an editor, an agent, or they're an author themselves, and you really, if you could afford it, you really have the benefit of getting line by line edited and having somebody analyze the structure and slowing down and getting notes and then doing a rewrite. And not only did that help me, that's basically one of my secret weapons for selling 9 books, is that now instead of rushing and getting it out there too quickly, I slow down, and I have a list of fabulous ghost editors who are willing to work on the manuscript with me before I show it professionally. So one of the mistakes that I've made is I've just finished a book too quickly and sent it out there before it's ready to be shown. So I want to find out, Naomi, from your standpoint, what are authors doing wrong? Like, are you getting half-baked projects or projects that are being shown to you too early that need more work, or is there something that authors, the authors that you're turning down, is there any pattern in terms of what are they doing wrong, do you think?
I do get a fair amount of inappropriate submissions.
What's an inappropriate submission for you? Mm-hmm. Like, for example, if you don't do mystery and someone's giving you a thriller, then that's a mistake because they haven't gone to your website.
Genre is definitely a problem. Okay. I think it's very important when you're making submissions to know what kind of material your agent or publisher handles and enjoys doing and has had some success doing.
So you go to the website, you go to an agent's website, and you check it out, and you make sure that the genre that you're submitting is appropriate.
Yes, and then there was a problem. I know a lot of writers. I'm in a writing group myself. I had a fellow comrade in my writing group submit a manuscript to me about 4 years ago, and it was beautifully written, but the problem was that nothing happened. It had no plot. It was utterly static, and she was quite infatuated with it. Nobody else in the world was, and I tried to break the news to her rather gently that, she did have some interesting material and potential, but that she had to push it. I said, yeah, it's interesting that you've based this character on your mother and you've written about her in a very compelling way, but what happens to her and why should anybody else care? And I think that's a very big question. Is this worth other people's time?
And by the way, I often, when I try to figure out why are half of my students getting published or literary agents or book deals during the class and half of them not, I think that the difference is the people who can take criticism, the people who are open to criticism and rewriting,
yes,
tend to have luck, and the people that are like, I'm not changing one comma, they're self-publishing.
That's true, and this woman was very upset that I had said this, and it was the end of a friendship.
Wow. Okay, Renee, as both an editor and an agent who does fiction and nonfiction, could you talk about what are the mistakes that you're seeing? Do you get people that are sending you books too early before they're really ready?
Well, I should probably talk about the query letter first.
Please do.
So I get a number of query letters that aren't addressed to me, for starters. They just say hi. So those can get deleted. Because I would never send something to Danielle that just says, "Dear editor," or "Hi." I write, "Dear Danielle, how are you?" I mean,
I loved your latest book. It was so brilliant.
Yes, right. I'm so happy you're still publishing Sue. I know my name is long and complicated, but you can do Dear Renee, Dear Mrs. Zuckerbrot, but no Dear Agent, no hi, no hey. I also get people who think that, I haven't, none of that. So let me say, when you are approaching an agent, what you're saying to them is, I would like to have a business relationship with you. So it's the same thing as if you're applying for a job. I don't think you would send something to Human Resources that says hey or yo or hi. Okay, it would be really straightforward. And so that's what a query letter is. Dear Ms. Zuckerbrot, Dear Renee, I've written this novel. I'm approaching you. Here's why. A little bit about the novel, a little bit about you. If you have publishing credentials, you can list them. Please don't list, I've been published in a lot of places. I don't, or I've been published in a lot of magazines, some you may know. Okay, so seriously don't waste my time, because I get more than 100 queries a week, and so that is sort of, don't send me something that says here's a link where you can read about me and you can download an excerpt. Wow, downloading is one step too many. If I have to actually go to your website, click on a link, wait, whatever, I don't have time. So it's really straightforward. Here's why I'm writing to you, here's my book, here's who I am. I've attached a sample chapter. That's what my website says. If you want, you can send a sample chapter as a Word document. I prefer Word documents because my eyesight isn't that great, and I cannot stand to read 25 pages in the body of an email. The other thing I would suggest is that you send a practice email to yourself, because I get a lot of emails where the font size is size 7 or 8, and I really can't read it, or where there's weird breaks, or sometimes apostrophes or other things. Something happens, it's translated, and you look at it and it's hard to read. So just make sure what you're sending, aside from the content, that it's all okay, that it actually reads. We get so many things that we really don't want to have to write back and say, it's really hard to read, can you see it's in two-point font. So really sort of basic like that. The other thing is, there's now so much information available for free online about what an agent does and what a publisher does. So I also get a number of queries where people tell me they want me to publish their book. Go, sure, okay. I mean, I'm not a publisher. I can help you get it published. So I think people also need to know what an agent does and what a publisher does. So I can't publish your book, but I can help you get it published. Or I guess one of my pet peeves, and this is really small, but I don't like when people write to me and say that they've written a fictional novel, because I think, as opposed to the non-fictional novel. Once again, that says to me that you're not a reader, perhaps not a writer, because I don't think, a real writer would say, I've written a fictional novel. I mean, that's what a novel is. So it's some of those small things that may seem really insignificant, but that get you eliminated. Because when you have work from clients and you're doing a million other things and you already have so many queries, plus you're reading literary magazines to find writers that you like, there's certain things you can eliminate. So I hope. And
I'm glad you brought up the literary magazine, because I always think that in my journalism classes I teach people how to publish a first essay, and a lot of times just based on that first essay they get a book deal. For example, my student Aspen Matus is here, and she did a great piece for Modern Love, and based on that she got a memoir from HarperCollins, and actually Jillian, a student of mine, just did a great piece for Huffington Post, and all these literary agents called her. So would you say that a good stage might be, after you've completed your book, if you could sell an essay or an excerpt, even if it's short, that might be a great way to start, because that way, instead of querying 100 agents or editors, they might come to you?
Yes, I mean, that is a great idea. You don't always have control over it if for some reason you can't place an excerpt. But, it certainly doesn't hurt. And I know people are always in a rush. I finished it, just what you said, and it's 3 a.m. and you hit send. But there's nothing wrong, unless your nonfiction book is tied to an anniversary or some specific date where it has to be published. Most books really sort of can wait. I mean, it doesn't have to go out immediately. So if you think you can get an excerpt published, it's great. It certainly doesn't hurt. But if you don't get an excerpt published, that shouldn't prevent you from querying agents. You should still have faith in your work.
Merle, are there any mistakes that you made that you can that you're willing to reveal?
My whole book is about mistakes, so I kind of love mistakes. No, I do think mistakes are really important, and I think that one of the ways that I learn the best is by making them. That being said, I do agree that there are very basic things that you need to do professionally that a lot of people don't do, and they're the things that we've heard over and over again. It's like, don't say, yo, what up, I want you to represent my book, and slow down. Just slow down and take your time. I'm a very impatient person, and I'm all about instant gratification, and that's a big part of journalism, as Sue knows. But there's nothing wrong with waiting, and there's nothing wrong with really taking the time to work on your craft and making sure it's the best it can be before you send it out.
Great. Emily, are there any more chairs? Do you think we can get some more chairs so people don't have to stand? That'd be great. There's a seat here if anybody wants it. Here. Shani or Janine, somebody want to? Oh, yeah. Okay, they'll get some more chairs for us. There's one right here, another one right here. Shani, you want one? Shani, you want a seat over here? Yeah, there's one where they're going to get some more. Matt, so from Foundry must get a ton. Yeah, there's one right in here, Shani, right over here. No, right over here. The second row. Shani, right here. Sorry. Got it. Foundry must get a ton of queries. So what mistakes are you seeing? Do you agree with Renee? Like, are you seeing inappropriate, like sort of anonymous sending to million agents kind of queries?
It's funny that, I mean, it really does seem like an epidemic. I mean, it's all this. I was like, well, what mistakes are they? And you basically have listed all of them.
There are more.
And they happen consistently, though, all the time. Like the name of the agent is not spelled correctly, if the name is even there. But I think something that's nice and something that makes me pay a little more attention to a query letter is if you've done the research of the person that you're submitting to. And it's like, oh, well, you represented this book, and I think that my style is like this, or I appreciated this book a lot, or this agency does a lot of this, and that's kind of what I'm working towards, something that shows that they haven't just, opened a book and just submitted to every person in the world, but it's actually been like a thoughtful process for them, the person that they're choosing to submit to, that there's purpose behind it. It shows that the author is really invested in this, as like Royal said, as a business relationship, and they realize that you're making a partnership with this person, potentially. So putting something personal in it, but that is also tied to the professional, I think is something that makes me look twice and often request a lot. Every agent has a different set of rules, basically, if they want it in the body of the email or if they want it as an attachment, whatever it is. Paying attention to that is important. If the person you're submitting to just wants a query letter, you kind of have to realize that, like, that's your shot for them to say, hey, let me see some pages, and finding a nice way to show that you're invested in them as a possible business partner is important, I think.
Yeah, man, I think that's brilliant, and I'll go as far as to say that in my journalism classes, the first thing I say to people is if you're going to submit your work to an editor at the New York Times, at O Magazine, at Self, whatever newspaper, magazine, Google that editor and start your letter complimenting them or talking to them. So just for an example, if you're writing Dan Jones at Modern Love, where a lot of my students have broken in, he has a big book himself, he has a novel out, he has a Modern Love anthology. So when you start your letter to him, instead of saying, here's my brilliant piece that you should publish and give me money so I can get a book deal, which is alienating, if you started with, I love your column and your anthology, congratulations on your book deal, then I think that already is going to make him feel like you at least did your homework. And I know personally, because I don't know why, because I'm a teacher, so I don't know why people are constantly sending me their material, but there's a huge difference if someone starts in, I just finished my brilliant 700-page novel that my professor said was, it's already delete, like letters we haven't finished reading, but the minute that it starts, oh, I love 5 Men Who Broke My Heart, or if somebody uses it, my friend Aspen told me how great your classes are, I'm like, oh, what a nice person, and I'm already like, it's like a subconscious thing, but I already feel like I like the person because they've taken the time to know who I am and to compliment me. So I think that's really smart. Danielle, so you've been an editor now for a long time at a bunch of different houses, and you've done fiction and nonfiction. Could you also talk a little little bit about what are the mistakes when you're saying no to book projects? Is there anything that hasn't been mentioned that you can think of that would help authors here?
I would say in acquiring editors position is a little bit different because it's not necessarily the writer who's doing something wrong, because you're getting submissions via the agent. So you're not blaming the author necessarily, wishing that there was more sample material, for instance, if there really just isn't enough to get a sense of the whole project. You're basically thinking, or you may call the agent and say, hey, is there any more sample material?
Let's slow down a little bit, because with a nonfiction book, I'm under the impression that what you want to do is you need an overview of the book. You want a little bit of a marketing summary of what books this was like. And when you say sample material, you need a couple chapters, fully written chapters from the book. So would you say, I know that you and I have talked about this, but a lot of times like 50 pages for a first author who's never published anything before, that's a fair amount of pages, right? Because sometimes you say that people just want to, they have a fantasy that they could sell a book on 3 pages, and really a lot of times you need to see more in order to...
you need about 2 or 3 chapters, I would say, definitely, if it's nonfiction, to really show the range, to show different themes that you're going to be addressing in the book, in addition to a table of contents or some kind of index or overview where you kind of show what the arc, you want to show that your whole project has been thought out from beginning to end. So I would say my issues necessarily aren't with authors, because I'm mainly seeing things through via agents. But I would say one thing, and this seems to be mainly talking about nonfiction, just because there are so many different parts of a nonfiction proposal or something that you're submitting, whereas a novel, it's often the novel and a letter. But with nonfiction, there should always be a comp section, other types of books that are out there that are like yours. So pretty much I would always tell authors, don't say this is the only book on X, and then I go on to Amazon or B&N or someplace else or the bookstore and I can find 7 other books that are similar. That's really really do the research.
But don't compare your book to Great Gatsby or Eat, Pray, Love.
Or Eat, Pray, Love. But definitely doing the research to really show that there is a market for your book, because you almost want to show, if your book is the only book on X, well, there might be a reason why there has never been a book on X. Maybe there isn't such a big audience for that in book form. Or maybe no one's thought of it before and it's a brilliant idea and it's going to be wonderful. But do the research to see what else is out there that might be in your genre, to show there are books that are in this genre, but also that show how yours is different, better, takes it in a different direction.
And if you don't mind, since you read a lot of novels, and I think when an agent is submitting a book, they're submitting a whole novel. So for first novelists, are there any specific mistakes that you can think of? Like, do you feel like people are maybe rushing too much and sending a book before it's ready to you?
Yeah, I mean, that is always a problem where you're always wishing, oh, I wish this had one more good edit. I wish something else, I wish there had been one more good edit on this book before I was seeing it, one more polish on it. So I absolutely agree that it's worth its weight in gold to go to a freelance editor, many of whom are out there, many of whom are excellent, who've worked in publishing houses as acquiring editors, so they also sort of know what editors are looking for, to have that kind of once over to help kind of draw out different aspects. Some agents do that a lot with their clients, but some agents also aren't editors necessarily, so I think it is very helpful to have an editor look it over, a freelance person, before you're submitting.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested, I have a list. You can email me, have my email on the card. I actually have a list of ghost editors that I highly recommend who I've used myself, and one of them is here, Marcy Jermansky, who's a literary novelist with a couple great books out herself. So my feeling is, if I'm going to pay someone to work on my book, I either want an author who's published books I admire, because then I know their style, a literary agent, or someone who's worked as a book editor. So most of the people that I've worked with, you really have this exciting feeling that you're working with a professional to help you. So Moses, can you tell us, while you were doing your project, were there any mistakes that you think that you made?
Sure. So I'm going to kind of follow up on a couple of points that were made earlier. Number one, just follow the goddamn instructions. Like, honestly. Network, talk to the agents after the class or whatever. Go to their website, see how they like their query letters. follow the format of the query letters, be professional, and send as many as you can. Like, to a large extent, I think trying to find an agent is a numbers game, and the more you send out, the more you have that chance of hitting somebody who just like loves your voice, and there you go. But yeah, you got to be professional and you got to follow the instructions. So what I did is I'm the kind of person that can only ever do anything if I have to. Like, so I did my query letter. I got a response back from my agent that's like, this is great, I'd love to see more. And I was like, because I just kind of sent out the query letter being like, I'll figure out the rest when I do it. And I knew what the next follow-up was, like the proposal and everything, and I did not have it ready. Instead of having like a professional proposal ready with like a sample chapter, which is what you should have and what my agent wanted, I kind of centered 10 short stories of like ranging from like kind of 10 samples of potential chapters, which I was lucky enough that she kind of liked the writing enough that she went for it, but it was definitely like a stupid thing to do to not have the second step ready. Like, I really got lucky in that one. So that's kind of what I would say to that. With comps, list comps that sell. Don't list comps that are your favorite books that don't sell. So that's another mistake I made. I did the proposal and she shopped it around, and I asked for my rejection letters. Ask for your rejection letters, it tells you a lot. And one of them was just like, you know, I love the writing, it's a great topic, but I looked at the comps and they've all sold less than 10,000 books, and I don't think that they're...
When you say comps, you mean the comparable titles
Right.
that seem similar to your book. So you name a couple books. So on one hand, you don't want to say Eat, Pray, Love, or Great Gatsby. On the other hand, you don't want to pick a book that sold 10 copies, because then they're going to go, why would we do another one?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I learned from that, like, try to pick one or two comps that are realistically like your book and have sold decently. Don't pick your favorite book by your buddy that did not sell.
Great. Now, Leigh, I'm going to ask you two different kinds of questions, because first, since you're an editor, and I know that a lot of people pitch you as an editor, could you talk about some of the mistakes that people make when they're pitching you because they want to write for Oprah.com?
Yeah, actually, it's a complicated question for me because I have 3 jobs. So I'm the author of Still Points North at Dial. I work at Oprah.com as an editor of essays, and I actually have my own publishing company of books. So I work in all 3 capacities as a publisher, editor, and a writer.
So tell us some mistakes.
An editor at Oprah.com, what I really see with writers, the number 1 mistake is just being difficult. The really good authors are not difficult. You hand them back some changes, they say, terrific, I'll have this back literally in 45 minutes. And Patchett, 45 minutes. That's how long it takes her to get back edits, and that's the thoroughness with which she approaches your comments. She has some idea, like most good writers, that you're out there to make her look good. My job as an editor to make you look good. I don't want you to look bad. I want you to look great. That's the only reason why I'm making these line edits or wholesale edits. That I want you to have something wonderful. I want you to get your clip. I want you to get your money, and I want you to feel good. So that's the number 1 problem. That's the, and I've gotten to the point where it's like, if I get 3 drafts in and things are really going south, I'm just like, goodbye. Thank you so much. I enjoyed working with you, but I can't do this anymore, and I don't want to waste your time. So as a magazine, that's the number 1 thing.
Now, as a, could you talk about the kind of books that you're publishing?
The books that we publish tend to be very quirky, multi-genre things. The name of my company is called Black Balloon Publishing. We've had an enormous amount of success. We only publish 2 books a year. And the number 1 mistake I see with authors coming to us is that, actually, I tend not to see so many mistakes on that. We have a very specific, quirky taste, and most of the authors tend to research it very carefully before they come to us, because they've had a number of rejections before they come to us. Like their idea is slightly different, and they've had to think about it a little bit. And I would say that they have kind of fully formed proposals when they come, not so much in terms of comps, but the idea itself is rarefied and identified.
You're doing fiction or nonfiction?
We do fiction and nonfiction, and sometimes we do photography books, and I'm very patient with editing with them. It often ends up being like a year of edits. Again, it's that receptivity towards, hey, she's in my corner. There's a reason why she picked this out of the slush pile and has spent 6 months reading it, you know, the authors that are open to that are the authors that you want to work with. That's the whole reason why you get into the game, right?
Now, in terms of your own writing mistakes, I think you admitted when you came to speak to my class that you had started another book and then put it away.
Yeah, my mistakes as a writer are the opposite of what you're saying. I'm from Alaska. I wrote this book about Alaska. Most Alaskans are very self-sufficient, and so rather than send it out right away, I would sit on it. I did it for years, perfecting each the and but without really thinking about the larger structural problems. And so there's two different things, right? You can sit on something and embroider the sentences and lavish your attention and maybe even show it to some people who are, you know, a few people, but you know, I kind of holed up with my manuscripts, and that's a problem. You know, at some point you've got to get out of the gate. Another problem I actually learned from Aspen, one of Sue's students who's here, although I can't see her because I'm too short. Hi. I wrote my whole manuscript as one working Microsoft Word document. And at certain times that was 340 pages. And if you start working in Microsoft Word, you'll see that it develops glitches, very painful glitches. And Aspen was like, oh, why don't you just write each chapter as a document, as a separate document? It never occurred to me. But really, you need to do that. You need to do that. You need to divide it up into 50-page chunks if you don't even do it as chapters because you want to see the running through story, right? Because if not, you're going to develop some horrible glitches. And I had at least 4 times where the whole manuscript crashed before crucial deadlines when it was supposed to go into Random House, like 2 days before. I lost the whole thing. It kind of went crazy and developed some weird thing and started making auto-format things, which I don't think are avoidable.
Wow.
So please divide it up and send it out.
Wow.
Not necessarily to an agent, but as they said, to an editor or to anybody who's got very, you know, whose taste you trust.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, then we're going to open it up. Okay, so I want to know what's next. So just for an example, Naomi, what do you want? What are you excited in terms of Heliotrope? What are you looking for? Like, are you open for more memoirs? Are you looking for new, quirky, interesting voices? Do you want a new novel? What do you want to? What would you like to do next if you go to your computer or you get a submission? What's your fantasy?
Well, one of the meanings of the word heliotrope is that it's a flower that follows the sun. And I kind of see authors as being heliotropic, like, you know, they are the sun, the source of life, and they have to have some power. So what I'm really looking for, because I'm such a small operation, is somebody like Royal, who's been a great partner. I mean, he's really been contributory. I'm here because of him, for example. You know, he's taught me things, and he's put a lot of elbow grease into his own promotion, which is pretty much my weak point. I'm very good at development and design and, you know, creating a book, but getting it out in the world is a whole other kettle of fish. It's actually as involved as writing. And for him to be able to help me with that has been wonderful. So I'm looking for authors who have ideas, creative ideas about that, who have been around, who might, you know, contribute to the press as the press contributes to them. Partners.
I love that, especially because I think Royal took my class, and it's and he started publishing short pieces. And I always think, you know, sometimes if you think about a book, it's 300 pages and it's really hard to figure out, but 3 pages can change your life. And if I remember correctly, the book started with a 3-page essay that you did for New York Press.
It did, yeah.
Right.
Which I got my first piece of hate mail on. It was the first thing I'd ever published, and it was just this scathing hate mail. The title was "Shut Up, Whiny Rich White Boy," and I'm actually not rich. Whiny sometimes, maybe. But yeah, I think that publishing short pieces, and especially if they're first person, and just being willing to reveal yourself in them is so important. And even though it can be kind of scary, what I've learned through this book and through taking Sue's class is people really respond to the power of someone, you know, being that open and that vulnerable, and it can make you feel like less of a freak at the end of the day.
And if you don't mind, you did something else really brilliant, I think, which is, aside from doing first-person pieces, Royal started doing a lot of author profiles. He does some fantastic ones for interview.com, and you're doing profiles for the New York Post and book reviews and stuff. And I think you get great karma, great book karma by doing that. So would you say that by doing book reviews and author profiles that you get to read a lot and see a lot of memoirs, and did that help your process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that was such an important part of growing my identity as a writer, being able to talk to authors that I so hugely admire. And my ex-girlfriend wouldn't agree because it doesn't pay, but I think it pays in experience, and it pays in the fact that, like, Kristen Johnston, who I grew up watching on Third Rock from the Sun and who's won Emmys, gave me a blurb for my book because I interviewed her and we hit it off and we started a relationship. So I think not only do you learn so much, but you, as you said, it's karma. So these authors now feel like, oh, I know, you know my work, I want to read your work, and that's fantastic.
And what's next for you? Do you think you're going to do, will you do a novel next, or are you going to keep doing journalism?
I'm never writing a memoir ever again.
So what about a novel, or are you going to do more journalism?
I mean, look, journalism got me here, and I love it so much, and so journalism is something I definitely want to keep doing. In terms of books, I definitely think fiction is where I'm headed. Fictional novels, and I'm going to send them. I'm sending them all to Renee.
Great. And Renee, tell us what's next for you. Like, for example, what are you looking for the most? Like, if you, do you get excited if somebody introduces themselves and says they have a new literary novel, or are you more open to memoir or biography? What do you want in your inbox?
Well, I'm open to a lot of things. What I'm really looking for is a great horror novel. I love Joe Hill. 20th Century Ghosts, for example, is one of the best short story collections. I would love a really smart, well-written commercial horror novel, and they're harder to find than you would think, but there you have it. I'm also looking for more science books. I just signed up a writer who's doing a book about comparative oncology. I'm looking at research, cancer research, for drugs for humans and dogs, and it's actually really fascinating. So it covers two of my favorite subjects: science. I was a science major in college for a while, and as Leigh knows, dogs. I am obsessed with dogs, and I actually have a dog book out now called Maddie on Things, which has gotten some traction. And so science and dogs, and so I just signed up a book that covers both. So, but any science books. I do natural history. I have an author who wrote a book that many of you may have seen called Mannahatta, which was an ecological history of Manhattan. That came out 3 years ago, and his new book is out now called Terra Nova, and it's a look at, well, I can't do a short pitch, but it's a look at, part of it is reimagining the suburban landscape for the 21st century, sort of a new take on Jane Jacobs a little bit. But, at the end of the day, I'm looking for a great story that is well told, and that is compelling, and that, to touch on something Naomi described, that isn't also navel-gazing. I mean, there has to be a reason that someone wants to read this book. What is the takeaway? Whether it's a novel, is there a universal theme? Are we going to look at a situation? If you have The Orphan Master's Son, are you going to look at North Korea in a different way? Whatever it is, what is the takeaway? And why would I, for example, I don't know, give the book to my father to read? I mean, that's sometimes how I judge things. Like, how would my father is an avid reader, fiction, nonfiction, history. When I give him a book, I have to, present him with a reason why I'm asking him to spend time.
I've had a lot of editors and agents who come to my classes and say that the criteria for if they're going to buy a book is two things. One is that they have to fall in love, and then in New York they always say, I have to miss my subway stop while I'm reading it, which I think is great. Matt, what are you looking for next? Like, if you go to your inbox, what do you want? Do you want an exciting memoir, a new novel by a voice you've never heard before? What would be your fantasy if you could choose?
I'm a sucker for literary fiction. That's what I really like reading. A lot of the query letters that I was talking to, the people that I sort of identify with, is they mention writers that I enjoy reading, and if those are authors that have inspired them, then I like to think that something that they're writing is, similar, if it's in, content or if it's in voice. Lately, I've found myself interested in things that have to do with technology and our relationship to technology. I'm working with a visual artist on a kid's book about technology and children's relationship to technology. A client who's working on a book that's about our relationship to technology and sex. I also am interested in people that are journalists. I'm interested in music, so people that have, want to talk about music, want to find a story in music that's never been told before. I'm working with a guy right now who is working on a book with a guy that slept with Brian Epstein, the manager of the Beatles, for like 30 years and is basically unknown in the world. So finding niche things, I think, what really grabbed me.
Great, Danielle, what are you looking for, really?
I do a pretty wide variety of commercial fiction and nonfiction. And so on the fiction side, I love, I mean, everyone has said the same thing, but it basically is the voice. I mean, when I'm sitting down as an editor, I get dozens of submissions every week. So I have to, when I read something, just the voice of it just has to pull me in and capture me, where for me, maybe not so much reading on the subway, but anytime I put it down, or if I have to put it down, all I can think of is I have to get back to that. I have to see what's going to happen, whether it's, if it's fiction, I guess see what's going to happen. Nonfiction, I have to know what's coming next in it. So definitely the voice, the story, as everyone has said too, that it's something that is universal to some degree, that people can relate to it. So for fiction, wide range of commercial fiction. I do a lot of women's fiction. I do suspense and thrillers. I do kind of book club, upmarket commercial, what we call upmarket commercial fiction. Nonfiction, I do memoir. And again, with memoir, since there are so many memoirs out there, definitely looking for something where it's a little bit different. You know, the take on whatever the theme is a little bit different. It's not the 12th book on bulimia or the 12th book on X, Y, or Z. You know, it has to be a little bit different, or different, such as a voice that really pulls you in. I actually love dogs and animals as well, so I'll be on for that science dog book. And I do a pretty wide range. I mean, the nonfiction I do tends to be very voice-driven as well. And I actually really like humor, too, so that's another topic that I'm interested in.
Great. Moses, are you working on a new book yet?
I am not. I was not able to write a word after this process for like 3 months. It completely exhausted me. Once you all get your deal, the advice I would have is, like, when you're in writing mode, start talking to your publisher about promotion, and set aside like a few little snippets and articles and copy that they can place around and do promotion with. Because, you know, I wrote the book, I was completely exhausted from writing, and then the promotion starts and everything is like, I need 10 secret places around the world. I need like 5 hidden places in America, and it's just like your job then is to generate copy, and it was very difficult. So I'm taking a little mental break from writing. What I am doing is continuing to meet with my publisher, continuing to meet with my agent. Writing is a creative process, and when you're doing a creative process, sometimes your head goes weird places, and I suspect I might have been the kind of writer that is difficult to work with, so we'll never work with Leigh again. But, you know, I want to stay in touch and be like, you know, in the next process, how could we work smoother together? What could we do better? And continue, you know, not just working on your writing, but also working on your relationships and maintaining those relationships, and working on yourself as a business person, and being easy to work with also.
Great. Leigh, are you working on a new book? Or are you going to revisit the novel you mentioned?
No, I'm actually already working on a new book.
Can you tell us anything about it?
Yeah, it starts at 4:30 every morning. Yeah. I work at 4:30 in the morning, and it's about Alaska, and it's a novel. And, you know, I don't really tend to talk about books midstream. Not that I've had so much experience, but, you know, I'm rolling on the pages. I do think that I've heard so many different variations of what was said on the table about why is this worth my time, or I really do think it is one thing that I think about a lot is like, what's at stake for you as a writer? Like, what are you trying to say? I know that sounds so basic, but it's actually quite difficult, and often takes many, many, many pages to arrive at. Often you've got to go all the way to the end to realize what you're trying to say.
I actually have a morbid way that I decide what I'm writing next, which is I always say, if I'm dying in 6 months, when am I leaving the world? No, I swear, because I have so many different ideas, but that immediately cuts through, like, because some of them are silly or I don't really care about them. So I always think if there was one story that I need to tell, or one thing that I have left to tell, for some reason that really, you know, that means the most to me, for some reason that helps me kind of clarify what my next project should be.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's partly that. It's like, what am I going to say if I was going to die tomorrow? Or what was I going to say if, like, I put this out in the world and all these people were looking at it, you know? What's my personality coming out of the page? You know, what's important to me? And how do I illustrate that? I think sometimes we get so caught up in the idea of what it's going to be like, or how our lives are going to change, or how beautiful our sentences are, or how it's going to define us as people, that we forget actually the most important thing is what we're trying to say about the experience here on the planet.
Good. Okay, so let's take some questions from the audience. So if anybody has any questions, why don't you raise your hand and you could ask it to everybody or to one specific person. Yes, and if you say a question, I'll repeat it in the mic.
Great. This is to anybody. You spoke a little bit in the beginning about creating a platform in relation to nonfiction. If you are an aspiring fiction writer with a totally different professional background in writing, what advice would you offer somebody that kind of wants to dive into that genre?
What's your name?
Sam.
Okay, so Sam just asked, if you're a fiction writer, is there a way to get a platform if you have a different profession? I'll tell you what I did, because I have 2 novels out. People don't, this is counterintuitive, but quite often, even if you're writing fiction writers can still publish first-person essays. And so what I've done is I have published first-person essays that are a little bit similar to the topic of my novel. And so if you get a Modern Love or a Lives column or an opinionator at the New York Times, and at the bottom it says, you know, so-and-so is working on a novel on the subject of, I think that that helps you. In fact, I have a student, Sarah Harrington, who wrote just a piece about, she's a yoga teacher, a great piece in the New York Times anxiety column, and at the bottom she said she's working on a young adult novel and got agents to call her and ask about the novel. So I think selling a nonfiction piece, especially if it's great or it shows your writing, you know, how well you write, I think that that could also help you. Aside from, of course, selling a short story would be great.
Sue's right. I mean, listen, I can't tell you, like, I know novelists that have taken an issue of obesity, removed it from the novel, and they're an opinionator for the New York Times. If you can find some central issue that's in your novel and publicize it that way. Book reviews, interviews like Sue suggests. You know, even at Oprah.com, we do tons of essays with fiction writers because they tend to be amazing writers. So if they're going to write, if they've written a novel about relationships and the complexity therein, and then they write some essay called like 7 Things to Never Say to a Single Woman, it tends to be funny and lively and real, and the language is completely developed and the voice is there. So fiction writers almost are ahead of the game because they have their imaginations as well as the full experience of their nonfiction lives.
Yeah, and actually in my classes, Leah has come to speak, but we teach, and you can learn how do you pitch an author profile, how do you pitch a review, how do you do a roundup of the, you know, the 5 hottest new summer books. So I think, to me, that's, you know, that helps. Do any of the editors or agents have anything, or Royal, any other ideas?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Leigh was saying, I think, you know, I'm a nonfiction writer, but journalism, like interviewing fiction writers, still helped me. So I think author profiles, interviews, author Q&As, like working with people that are also writing fiction and getting to talk to them is such an important experience, no matter what you're writing.
Great. Anybody else?
The other thing I'd say is almost important as having a platform is demonstrating the willingness to have a platform. I think like and the editors and agents can say this better than I, but I get this feeling that every editor has the same nightmare, which is they come across this proposal, they fall in love with it, it's absolutely brilliant, they buy it, they go to meet with the author, and they're like, this is great. You know, this is going to be such a hit, and the author goes, you're not going to be publishing this in October, are you? I do a Zen retreat every month, and and what is this, Twitter? And, you know, like that. So just like, do a blog. Don't have to write a lot. Don't even have to write about what your book is about, just so you can say, I blog at whatever, and then the agents and editors know you're the kind of person who blogs. So just demonstrating that willingness to be promotional is a really important thing.
Good. There was a question over there. Yes?
Yes. I'm really curious about how the writers and the agents and publishers feel about the distinction between literary and commercial fiction. Because as a writer, I'm just wondering, like, am I supposed to know, like, whether, I mean, I know, like, what I read, and I know kind of the writers that I think I'm sort of like, but is that distinction supposed to be super clear to me as I'm writing, like, this is
What's your name?
Or this is literary? Shannon.
Okay, Shannon wants to know about, should she understand the difference between literary and commercial?
In terms of what I'm creating.
In terms of what you're creating. Okay.
I'm going to say it's pretty vague. If it sells a lot, it's commercial. If it doesn't sell a lot of copies, you've written something literary. I mean, writers get really hung up on titles, and I have to say, I wish writers would not. I had a writer 2 weeks ago asked me, we were talking about maybe working together, where she fit in the literary canon, and I thought, I don't even know. You haven't published your first book. I mean, it seemed so. I would get rid of titles. Don't think commercial. Think seriously, well written. I mean, commercial. Sort of the chestnut is if it's plot driven, it's commercial. If it's character or voice driven, it's literary. But I don't know. Why would you want to put yourself in a box? I would aim for the sweet spot. I would aim for something that is well written, probably character, voice driven, but that reads like a thriller. There's an editor who used to have her own imprint. She's now a publisher. Her name is Reagan Arthur. She publishes Josh Ferris. A lot of agents will say that she hit the sweet spot. I mean, all of her books, or most of her books, will hit the sweet spot. They're so well written. The language is really beautiful and clear. And the stories are compelling, and that they move at a fast pace. There's no navel gazing. There's a universality. They're smart. There's lots to take away. So I would try not to get hung up on labels.
If you are hung up, which a lot of people are, then what I would do, especially in terms of what you read and in terms of literary agents and editors, really pay careful attention, because I actually have a student right now who's she has it in her head, she has a PhD, she has it in her head, she only wants to be literary, and she's working on a memoir, and I suggested 10 literary memoirs, like a Mary Carr type person is really good for her to study so she can emulate the style. But also, if you look at the books that a literary agent is doing, you can absolutely tell the difference between shit my father tells me versus Mary Carr's Liars Club. So pay attention. And you know what? There's actually very easy cliches about publishers too, because if you really if you want to look at literary publishers, FSG, Norton, Pantheon, so if that is your big thing, I would say, go on websites and look at the different publishers and read literary novels to understand the difference between, what's the difference between Judith Krantz and Jonathan Franzen. There's a huge difference. So if you really, if you really don't understand, I think that there are easy ways to read and to figure out the difference.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah.
It's also going to be your agent's job. If you've written something commercial that really sort of is commercial and is not, Jonathan Franzen, it is your agent's job to submit it to an editor who publishes commercial fiction at a commercial house. And if you've written something, a short story collection, I mean, rarely is a short story collection ever described as commercial. It's literary. No one's going to buy it. No, I shouldn't say that. I represent a lot of collections. But, they're tougher to sell to American readers. Americans tend to prefer novel-length works. Then your agent is going to submit to literary editors who love short story collections at literary houses. Grey Wolf, FSG, Tin House, Knopf, Norton, Grove, the list goes on and on.
Good, and you could read literary, if you read literary magazines, as she just said, Tin House is a great one, Paris Review, The New Yorker, that tends to be literary, so it'll help you learn the difference, I think. Other questions? Yeah. Yes, Keisha?
Some of the panelists mentioned when you're preparing to choose books that have done well, and I wondered what that number is when you're looking at other books that are like yours. How many have they sold?
Yeah, so Keisha wants to know if you're picking comp titles for your market analysis of your book, how many books does a memoir have to sell to compare it? Truthfully, I use the bestseller list, and there's a difference between Eat, Pray, Love, which is on the bestseller list for 5 years, versus a book that I saw on the bestseller list for a few months that I thought was smart. So that's my criteria. Danielle, what would you say if she's supposed to be looking for? She's working on a memoir, so if she's looking for similar memoirs, is there a number of books or bestseller list?
I wouldn't say there's a number. I mean, things are different for different publishers. Are looking for different things, and a number that seems great for someone may seem not great for someone else, all that kind of thing. So I would say Sue has a good idea to look at bestseller lists and not pick the thing that's been on there for 3 years, but kind of look at some of the other things. And honestly, just one comment I wanted to make in general is, as writers, to just be reading sometimes writers will say, oh, I write, and they can't read when they write, which I can understand that, but to read a lot of the stuff that's out there, read the things that are on the bestseller list, read the things that catch your eye in a bookstore, to be reading, because I think that makes you a better writer when you're reading just other things as well.
Right, and I'm in the National Book Critics Circle, so look at all the finalists in the MBCC, for example, for memoirs, because those might not be bestsellers, but they're highly acclaimed, so, and they are mostly literary, so that would give you a good view. Somebody over here have a question? Yes?
You said, well, you really needed 3 chapters, or you needed 3 chapters if you're writing a memoir for a book proposal. 3 chapters, should they be like from the beginning of the book, the middle of the book?
Yeah, Carol wants to know if you're going to submit for a book proposal for a memoir, if an editor wants 3 chapters, do they want the first 3 chapters, or could it be maybe the first chapter and a later chapter? Naomi? If someone's submitting a memoir to you, if they're submitting sample material, should it be the first 3 chapters in a row, or could you handle from the beginning and maybe from the end also?
I don't think it matters. I think what matters most is a summary of what the work's about, and I can usually tell within 10 pages if I respond to somebody's voice.
Renee?
I get a lot of queries where people will write a memoir or something nonfiction and they'll send me chapter 6. I actually like to start at the beginning, and sometimes I'll write back and say, you know, I really like your query letter, the subject matter interests me, can you send me chapter 1? And sometimes someone will say, you know, chapter 1, chapter 2 aren't that good. I certainly cannot submit that to an editor and say, you know, chapters 1 and 2, they kind of suck, but if you jump to chapter 3 or chapter 7, you'll be rewarded. You know what? You are not ready to start querying agents. A lot of people, you know, I'm a little rigid when it comes to that. I really like to read the first chapter. I mean, I like to get in on the beginning. I find it much easier to get a sense of how, you know, a story develops. Now, other people may be more flexible, so we'll see what they have to say.
Man, do you agree if someone's going to give three chapters for memoir, do you want the first 3 chapters?
I mean, I don't personally. I think finding, I guess, maybe the crux of the story and really looking at that. I don't know. I think that there's a, I was thinking, reading the first 2 things, I like looking at sort of a swath in different parts of the book. And
so
seeing
maybe
that
first chapter, middle, and end.
Yeah, and seeing that they can write in sort of different contexts as well, because sort of where you begin this memoir and where you end, you know, presumably are going to be different. And it's nice to be able to see they can sort of carry the voice and the feeling through different places in the book, which proves they can write the whole book.
Danielle?
Yeah, I would agree with that, that I also like to see, I like to see the beginning though as well. I do like to see the first chapter so I can see how someone is beginning their work if it's nonfiction. But then I do like to see maybe a chapter or 2 from the middle to the end of the book to see the emotional growth of this character, what kind of themes have been brought up. You know, I'd like to kind of see other bits that happen in the book, and that'll help me have a better view of the overall project.
Leigh, when you're looking for your publishing house, do you, if somebody sent you 3 chapters?
I agree with Renee. I want to be, just take it away. So I want to be finishing that 60 pages and think, oh wait, what's going to happen? You know, I also think that, you know, most readers approach it the same way. They'll open up a book on, a book on the shelf in the olden days, look at that first 5 pages and say, like, am I off with the horses, or am I sort of sitting behind? So I do think this is an opportunity where you can spellbind someone. It's not that I prefer, it's just what do I think might work the best if you're trying to seduce someone and you have 50 completely contained pages that take you away. That seems to me pretty good.
Carol, I'm going to tell you as a writing teacher what I say to people, which is if you're not well published, if you haven't been in the New York Times or the New Yorker, and you've never written a book before and you want to write a memoir, I say write the whole memoir. And I'll tell you 5 reasons really quickly why. Number 1 is I know people who've sold a book on a partial and choke because they've never written a book before, so they can't finish it. I know a lot of people, you start a book and you think it's going to go someplace, but then when you're writing it, it winds up lurching in another direction. And as Joan Didion says, I write to find out what I think. I also think that the process of writing a book can be really, really difficult and hard, and you don't know like say you sell a book and then a publisher says, okay, you have 6 months to give me 300 pages. Well, some people take 10 years to finish a memoir, especially if it's dealing with something really intense and difficult, so you don't really know your time frame, and to put yourself on a clock sometimes will only make you neurotic and crazy. My own experience has been that I write the whole thing. I published, I actually have my 4th memoir that's a co-authored memoir, The Bosnia List, coming out in March, and every single book is different, but I've never started a book with an idea of what it is and have it, it's never finished the way that it started. Usually it's better and more interesting when I'm done, which means that I could then pitch it better. Now, just because you write a whole book doesn't mean you have to send the agent or the editor the whole book, but I would say, as a couple of people have mentioned, that if you sell a book on 20 or 30 pages and you've never written a book before, that could make you crazy. So my feeling is write a huge chunk of it and then maybe take the best part to send it to an agent, but just make sure that, are you ready to go out with this material with a memoir? Can you really write a book? Do you know what it takes to write 300 or 250 pages? Are you sure you know what this subject is about? So my take on it is, a mistake that a lot of people make is they write 20 or 30 brilliant pages, but that doesn't mean that they could finish the book. So I would say, my attitude would be write the whole thing, and that actually gives you a lot of pages to decide which ones you're going to show an agent. Good. Yes, right here.
My name is Hi Bender. I'm going to respectfully disagree with you because I make my living helping people do book proposals.
Okay.
My experience is about 60 pages for the memoir, and then if
You're talking about the amount of pages to sell to an editor or an agent.
Always want to start with the first chapter because people are going to start on the first chapter. If the first chapter is good, then they're going to throw the book away.
Right, but I didn't say you have to write the whole book and send it to an agent. I'm saying from a writer's standpoint.
From an editor's perspective, as was mentioned, you want to be able to mold. When the publisher gets a proposal, it's easy to change the outlines. And say, chapter 2 should be chapter 7. Chapter 5 should really focus on this instead of that. You take away the editorial ability to mess around with the book.
Yeah, I would say every editor and every agent I've spoken to feels differently. So I'm coming from the standpoint of this is my 4th memoir that I'm publishing, and I've had 70 students who've published books, and I've had a bunch of people choke. So just because you could write 50 pages doesn't mean you could write 300 pages on deadline.
The other thing I would say is if you're working, I just want to say my website is bookproposal.net. If anyone's interested, if someone's working with me, I help with your proposal, and then once they get a contract, I make sure that they get the contract.
Other questions? Yes, right here. I'm sorry, you said that Royal had 4 years of writing that taught him patience.
She asked if it did.
Okay. Did it teach you patience?
Kind of. Look, I think that being crushed by life a little bit can be a really good thing. And yeah, it taught me patience, and I think so much of my early mistakes were just jumping the gun, and like Sue said, making that rookie mistake of finishing something and being like, it's brilliant, 3 a.m., send, and it doesn't get you where you want to be. And I think that patience and taking the time to do the hard work can only help you. There's no way it can hurt you unless, I guess, like Leigh, you're like overly neurotic and taking too much time. I mean, certainly don't take 25 years, but again, when you're young, you do have that time, and you have the time to learn the business and really write and focus on your craft, and that is so important.
Good. Other questions? Yes.
What do you recommend about a book that's not necessarily book length, so to speak, maybe 100 pages or less?
What kind of book?
Somewhat memoir, somewhat inspirational. Like Leigh was mentioning before, what is the purpose of the book? Or the message that you're trying to get across. So what if you can get that across in 100 pages?
Well, you know what? My friend David Blum is now doing Amazon Shorts. So actually there's a huge market for 100-page books these days, online, and they work out a deal where you get quite a bit of royalties. So I would say this is, 10 years ago I wouldn't have said 100 pages could be a book unless it was poetry. But I actually have seen shorts. Anybody know anything about the, are you, like, for example, Renee, if somebody came up to you, would you do a 100-page book at this point?
100-page, I mean, you know, you might be able to get away with maybe something called a novella or a novelette, especially for genre, like science fiction. Novellas and novelettes are published. You know, I hate to sort of say never. I mean, if you sent me the most delicious, glorious 100 pages and I had an epiphany and God knows what else, I would say, yes, you know, I'm going to try and find a publisher for you because I haven't read anything like this before. So, but it is tough. And Kindle Singles, which is David Blum's newish gig, is great. I heard Leigh mention Byliner and Atavist. I think they tend to do more journalistic pieces. They're really smart, by the way, both at Byliner and Atavist. They publish great stuff. It's sort of tough. But you hate, you know, if you read something, every once in a while you read something that breaks every rule in terms of, like, you know, genre, what publishers are looking for. I mean, your head says no, but your heart says yes. So, you know, you can't have a list full of, you know, head no, heart list. I mean, heart yes. You'll never pay your rent, your mortgage. But, you know, as agents, we make decisions. And every once in a while we think, you know, this is so special and this book needs a readership that you take it on.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, there's a great rule that I always say, which is you can do anything as long as it works. On the other hand, I have quite a few, because I teach writing and book seminars, I have quite a few people who come to me and say, this is my goal. I want a $100,000 advance and a hardcover for Random House, but then they describe something where they basically invented their own genre. And in that case, they have to say, well, if you want a mainstream publisher and a big advance, there's really 20 categories out there. There's 20 bookshelves out there. Publishers really, from new people, they basically know what they want. You know, they know there's novel, there's memoir, there's biography, there's, you know, so I would say if you want to be experimental and go to a really small publisher or an art publisher or self-publish, do whatever the hell you want, but if you're, you know, but make sure that there's not a contradictory goal. Because if you want a big advance from a mainstream house, I feel like, you know, if you look at their catalogs, they know what they're doing, and they pretty much do the same thing over and over. Were there a few more questions? Yes, Beth.
I actually have a question for the first time just now. So this is Julia. I have Danielle Perez, my knowledge, just about writing. You do so many different things, and I do as well. I write for magazines, and I consult them and writing the type of memoir. But how do you separate the time? Because I didn't the first time around have problems. I was so focused. I'm like having a little bit of a problem now.
Yeah.
Okay, so Beth does a bunch of different things. She's a jewelry designer, and she's writing. She wrote a great book called A Charmed Life with Danielle. She's working on another book, so she's interested because Leah does 3 different things. She's a writer, she's an editor, and she's a publisher, and she has 2 kids and a husband. So how do you divide up? And she gets up at 4:30 in the morning, but what's your other trick?
You know, it's all about compartmentalization. I actually think that mothers are pretty good at this. You know, like mothers are like, okay, 9 to 3, I'm a woman. 3 to 6, I'm a, like, I don't know what, like a s'more maker, like a peanut butter graham cracker person. No, I get confused, and I think you have to sort of set really clear limits. You know, when I wake up at 4:30 in the morning to write my book, which I consider my personal space, until 7 o'clock in the morning, I don't look at email. I don't check my Facebook. All this stuff is pinging on your phone the minute you open up the computer. You know, I think you should be really, really clear about it in your mind. And then think about the times of your day that are supposed to be for business. So probably 9 to 12 is like when I answer emails and I respond and talk to authors. And then from 2 to 6, I'm writing columns or editing really heavily with an author and thinking about what's going. Like protecting those little pockets and establishing that for the next 2 hours, I'm going to be thinking in this way, not I'm working on this project, but I will be thinking in this way, in a narrative way, or in an email way, or in a let's order groceries, figure out the tile, you know, what are we going to have for dinner kind of way. You know, sort of nuts and bolts of how do we keep going in a daily way. You have to organize that stuff. And I definitely think it's crucial to take what I call, and I hate to use this word because I took it from a self-help book, a tech Sabbath. I do not look at my phone or my computer from Saturday morning until Sunday afternoon. I just don't. And That's probably why I'll never rise to be the captain of the world, but it definitely clears out your mind. I feel like if you don't start setting up those firewalls, you're just going to run around like with a head with your like a chicken with your head cut off. You know.
Good. Any final questions? Yes.
I have a question for Renee. I'm Sandy Altner, and I am wondering, I'm a published author. I have been wondering what the changes in the industry, in the publishing industry over 4 or 5 years with the onslaught of ebooks. Have you found changes from the publishers you're approaching in terms of what they're looking for because of the difficulty in so many bookstores having to close and not being able to offer shelf space to smaller...
Okay, so she's asking, are ebooks, is ebooks changing the way that publishers are dealing with books? Renee?
No, my take on this is a very sort of complicated question that deserves a nuanced answer, because I think people are sort of confusing sort of ebooks and all the nonsense with Amazon with actually what an ebook is. So we're just talking about it's a different way to deliver a story. So the story, for the most part, doesn't really change, right? I mean, the only, you know, with something that like a graphic novel or children's illustrated books, they're a little bit sort of behind. Cookbooks are now even sort of catching up, you know, with ebooks. But for me, the whole mess really has to do with like pricing and predatory practices. I mean, that really have nothing to do with storytelling. So I don't think the ebook is sort of really changing what publishers are looking for. I mean, at the end of the day, they're looking to move units. Whether they move physical units or whether they move through, you know, the ether and cyberspace, they want to move units. And so that has sort of been my experience. I mean, I have yet to have a meeting with a publisher or lunch or drinks with an editor where they say, well, you know, I'm looking for this sort of as an ebook. Now, if you're Open Road Media, which is, Jane Friedman used to be the publisher of HarperCollins, and then she left, and now she founded Open Road Media, which does only ebooks, and they also do print-on-demand titles. You know, they have a very different business model because they're doing only ebooks. So for me, and others may disagree, I haven't heard an editor really sort of talk about. Now, some publishers will release something first as an ebook. I mean, they're few and far between. But for me, the way I see it's changed is that the old paradigm was you publish a book in hardcover, and then a year later you release a paperback. Those days are long gone. If you publish a book in hardcover, not as a trade paper, original, whether you actually get to have your book published in trade paperback, that's the big question mark. And a lot of writers, if your hardcover sales are flat, they're not going to publish a paperback because the ebook is there, and that has taken the place of the trade paperback. So instead of you getting sort of 3 bites at the apple, the hardcover, the paperback, and the ebook, if your sales haven't, according to the publisher, haven't warranted a trade paperback, haven't warranted them to spend money on production and shipping and warehousing and all that stuff, it's going to be hardcover and ebook. And Danielle should feel free to disagree because I feel this is more her sort of bailiwick, since she's the editor-publisher.
I'm not going to.
She doesn't disagree.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to.
Or anyone can disagree, by the way.
Very sticky, very complicated issue.
Danielle, finish?
Oh, I was just going to say it's a very complicated issue, but I would agree the main thing is what I'm looking for as an editor, I've been an editor for about 20 years, is great story. If it's fiction or nonfiction, it doesn't matter what format it is selling in at all.
Okay, Moses, last question.
One thing with ebooks is that more and more publishers are doing enhanced ebooks, and if you have a topic that lends itself to photo or video, start gathering photo and video stuff, and a lot of times your editor will be able to roll that into an enhanced ebook and charge more for it. So I would say, you know, it's very topic specific. Not everything lends itself to that. But if you're ever thinking, hey, I should film this for my book, film it.
Okay, so let's talk about what are we plugging? So Naomi, you have Fame Shark coming out, and I know that Royal's doing a great event on, is it June 28th at the Henry Street Settlement, right? And
everyone come to my big book party June 28th. And the Lower East Side, there's going to be endless booze. My dad's awesome art is going to be up, and Two Boots Pizza is sponsoring us, so free pizza for everyone.
Great. And Naomi, are there any other books that you have that we should be checking out from Heliotrope? Anything else you want to mention or plug?
nothing just yet.
Okay, so so everybody get Fame Shark, and the Strand should be getting them in a couple days. They'll have all the copies. Okay, Renee, any books that you have that are out that we could buy? Or,
Sure. For all you dog lovers, Maddie on Things. Chronicle published it at the end of March. It's based on a really popular Tumblr and Instagram account called Maddie on Things. You may have seen him on CNN, Entertainment Tonight, The Today Show, In Parade. I don't know, the list goes on and on. It's really, really fun. And Eric Sanderson's Terra Nova, which is a little wonky, talking about you know, how our reliance on oil and cars led to suburban sprawl, which is something he does not think is good for this country for many reasons. I mean, by wonky, I mean there's a lot of discussion about how oil is made, which is definitely wonky. But, you know, it's a smart, thoughtful book, and it will make you rethink, you know, if you have a car, it will make you rethink, you know, why you need to get in your car all the time and drive great distances, and why we have this reliance on oil, and why everything in the suburbs is spread out so far. But I'm an urban person, so maybe, you know, I'm a bit jaded.
Great, Matt. Do you guys have anything we should go buy? Already.
you should go buy Fame Shark.
Oh, and Fame Shark, Kindle and print,
Thanks.
or ebook and print.
Thanks,
Sorry.
And Foundry, you have anything else special that we should be looking for this summer?
Until I Say Goodbye is going to be coming out in paperback very, very soon. You should check out. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. Gave it to my mother for birthday. She read it in one day. It's a really, really fantastic book. It's about what it is to live. It's a woman dying of ALS, and she decides to travel the entire world with her last few months of life and sort of reflects on it all. And she's amazing and just a really beautiful, fantastic woman. She's great.
Great. And my last book that came out is I did Lighting Up, an addiction book with Danielle, and then the addiction specialist who helped me quit cigarettes, alcohol, dope, gum, and bread all in 1 year. He always had, he wanted to write his addiction book, so I actually helped him write his addiction book, which is called Unhooked, How to Quit Anything. And then I got a humor piece out of it about how I needed a shrink to help me write a book with my shrink. And also I still have a bunch of really cool summer classes, summer seminars and summer classes and fall classes coming up, so you could take my my cards if you want with my email address. Danielle, what do you have out now that we should look for?
I have a few things out this summer. One that we just published is called The Guest House by Erica Marks, who's a really wonderful writer. It's a novel kind of about this little guest house in Cape Cod, and over the years in this couple of families in Cape Cod, the different things that happen in and around this guest house, which is great. And the other that immediately jumps to mind is a suspense thriller novel by an author named Linwood Barclay, who writes kind of a domestic suspense sort of man who gets in over his head and things just kind of spiral out of control. And that book is called A Tap on the Window, and it's really terrific, and that's coming out in August.
Cool. And also last season she did Beth's book, A Charm Life, which is where Beth, who's a jewelry designer, it's a memoir where she told about each loss in her life through one piece of jewelry. So it's the love lost in what I wear of jewelry, Beth Bernstein. Moses, now you said that you're teaching a class, right?
I am teaching demography at the Pratt Institute, if anybody wants to enroll as an urban planning student and take my class. Yeah. But anyway, I have the Moses Gates Abandoned Observation Deck offer. Now, abandoned observation decks are my absolute favorite thing in the universe, and I have not gotten to every abandoned observation deck in New York City, and I want to. If you can get me to an abandoned observation deck or another interesting roof, they're all listed here, the ones I haven't been to. I will give you, number one, a personalized signed copy of the book. Number two, I will give you the secret map of the Paris catacombs in PDF or in hard copy. This is not something you can Google. This is something that you got to know somebody for. And if we happen to find ourselves in Paris at the same time, I do not put the chances of this as good, but perhaps realistic. I will give you a free personalized catacomb tour, which basically means you can schlep through underneath Paris with me if you want. I'll even take you in the sewers if you really want to. But I only have 20 of these, so if you don't actually think you can get me on an abandoned observation deck, don't take one. But if you can, or other interesting roof, definitely do. And even if you just work or live in the building but don't quite know how to get on the roof, I can probably figure it out, so get at me.
Okay,
I have one more thing. As I mentioned, in my real life, I'm an urban planner and a demographer. I'm leading a 14-mile walk this Sunday at noon from the least diverse to the most diverse census tract in New York City. It'll be from Midwood to Richmond Hill, 12 noon, outside DeFara's Pizza. DeFara's will be closed, don't get excited. Outside DeFara's Pizza, Avenue J and East 15th Street, noon on Sunday.
Okay, and Leah, aside from buying your beautiful book, Still Points North, which got amazing reviews, I know we're doing, August 6th, we're doing the Shrinks Are Away reading at McNally Jackson together, and Royal's going to do it too, so we have a reading where you can hear from the book. Do you have any other events coming up?
I do, but they're not in the city.
Tell us where.
One is in this wonderful new bookstore, and now I can't remember it because I'm panicked. It's in actually, gosh, what's it called? It's on the 28th. It's in, it's in Sullivan County. It's this fantastic bookstore that just opened up with Kelly McMasters.
June 28th.
June 28th.
Okay.
And then I have an essay coming out in Real Simple in August. It's about going on a camping trip with my 4-week-old newborn and the DAS. Yeah, I'm from Alaska. I thought it was pretty hardcore, and I took my 4-week-old on a camping trip.
Wow.
That was a nightmare.
Great one. Listen, so I want to thank all the fantastic panelists, but also want to thank the Strand Bookstore for putting this on. Thank you. And I don't know if you guys know it, but if you need any presents, this is the rare bookstore that you're in is the most amazing place in the world, and they have like a $20,000 first edition of James Joyce Ulysses signed by Matisse. Like if you need presents for any writers in the history of the world, this is the place to do it. So thank you, Emily. 45,000, excuse me. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Strand. Come say hi and take cards.
What up, do we need? Yo, dude.